जी हाँ दोस्तों साथियों, आप सभी को रेडियो सरगम ऑस्ट्रेलिया पर हम स्वागत करते हैं। जैसे कि पहले भी हम आ चुके हैं और आज हम आए हुए हैं हमारे साथ फिजी से, हमारे साथ सिडनी ऑस्ट्रेलिया में जुड़े हैं फिजी के प्रोफेसर बीमन प्रसाद, जो नेशनल फेडरेशन पार्टी के हैं, और साथ साथ में हमारे साथ मिस्टर सितिवेनी रंबुका, जो पैप्स पीपल अलायंस पार्टी के फाउंडर और जुड़े हैं आज हमारे साथ। तो उनके लिए हम इंटरव्यू लेकर आए हैं आप सभी के नाम से, और उम्मीद करेंगे कि आज जो हम इंटरव्यू कर रहे हैं, अगर आपके पास कोई भी क्वेश्चन है तो जरूर क्वेश्चन कर सकते हैं। साथ साथ में अगर हम देखेंगे इट इज रेलेवेंट देन वी विल आस्क द क्वेश्चन। और as I said, I'll say this in English. Today we are here in Sydney, Australia. Through Radio SARGAM Australia, I'm here to interview Mr. SITIVENI Rabuka from People's Alliance Party and Professor BIMAN Prasad from National Federation Party. So I will welcome them, and hopefully if you have got any questions, you can put it on the comment box, and if it is appropriate, we'll ask them the question. Or otherwise, you can always send us the message on the comment box. तो चलते हैं दोस्तों, I'll welcome on Radio Sargam Australia, Mr. SITIVENI Rabuka and Professor BIMAN Prasad.
Thank you, and pleasure to be here. और सभी सुनने वालों को मेरा नमस्कार।
जी हाँ दोस्तों, आप देख रहे हैं और आप you both are here today. The purpose of the visit for Australia, what is exactly you guys are here for today?
Well, I'm essentially here after probably 2.5 years. As you know, COVID was there, so I'm here to see some friends and family members, but also meeting a lot of them. A lot of them are interested in politics, and last night, we met some of them at the temple, and tonight I will join Mr. Rabuka at a dinner function that is organized in his honor and his party's. So it will be a pleasure to combine these things together.
Well, Mr. SITIVENI Rabuka, I will congratulate you as a leader and founder of PAP. So when I say PAP, what is your party stands for in the policy?
We are the People's Alliance Party, and we have had to form a party when the party that I belong to no longer welcomed me, not only as a member, but also as a leader, or maybe not only as a leader, but also as a member. And I have been on a journey. I've been on a journey in which I believe I can contribute to the governance of the land. There are values that I champion, that I treasure, and those are the ones that we have incorporated into the founding documents of the party, and that is to go back and create or help create a thriving economy, a thriving nation, a nation of all the races that now exist in Fiji and have contributed to the development of the land to where we are. In fact, in the last few years, we have lost the beauty of the land, particularly in our intercommunal relationships, and also, sadly, it's probably never been said before, the relationship between the government and the people. That is in a bad situation right now, and we would like to come back into the political arena in this new party and the new banner. And now we're working with the National Federation Party, the oldest party in Fiji. I was the youngest. My party was the youngest up to a few months ago, and two other parties were elected. So, a nation of loving people, a nation with a steady economy, a nation with a good, healthy international relationship with all our development partners, past and present, and also repair some of the intra-national problems that I might have been responsible for, and just continuing the journey that I started in Parliament as an elected leader from 1992 to 1999, and that toward the end of that, most of that period working with the National Federation Party.
All right, so how credible is your proposed coalition with the NFP?
Well, it's not a proposed coalition. We are a concrete coalition now. It's a post-election coalition. As you know, the laws in Fiji prohibit pre-election coalitions where we can say, well, we're working together and these are a list of candidates. Each party will have to have its own set of manifesto. We have our own constitution, etc. And there is no such thing as vote sharing. In our case, we will be contesting the 55 seats available for contest, and the National Federation Party will be doing the same, and we'll be appealing to those that have been true to the ethos of the political ethos we stand for. That is true and genuine multiculturalism, multiracialism, multireligialism, and just going back to having a Fiji that has been built by the various races we have, some contributing through very difficult times. Now we should be having good years, but we're not. And I've said this before, there is no bad nation, no bad country, only badly led. I mean, and it's easy to do that. We just change the leadership.
Right, sir. And Mr. BIMAN, what do you see in today's Mr. Rabuka that has motivated you to agree to post-election coalition with him?
Well, you have to go back in history a little bit. We all remember 1987.
Yeah.
We all remember 2000. We also remember 2006. But Mr. Rabuka and the National Federation Party have had a relationship in the 90s when he was the Prime Minister. And from 1992 right up to 1999, the then leader of the National Federation Party, Justice Jairam Reddy, and Mr. Rabuka as Prime Minister worked together to give Fiji the world-claimed 1997 Constitution. And in that period, there was stability, there was consensus building, there was unity, and they forged ahead to give that constitution to the people of Fiji. And under that constitution, they formed a coalition to fight the election in 1999. They lost, but we had an outcome where a first Indo-Fijian was elected as Prime Minister, and that that government was removed in a coup in 2000. And so we have a history of working with Mr. Rabuka. And like Mr. Jairam Reddy, I trust Mr. Rabuka. And I think what we have seen in the last 15 years, and at least in the last 7 years that I've been in Parliament, the state of our economy, state of our country, we have to, first of all, understand where we are before we talk about where we want to go. And I think people of Fiji wanted a choice. And what we have done with this post-election coalition memorandum of understanding or agreement is to give that choice to the people of a government that would be led by Mr. Rabuka and myself, which is looking forward, which is not going into the past, which is, as Mr. Rabuka said, provide a vision for an inclusive Fiji, a sustainable Fiji, an economic environment where we can work together with the people of Fiji. And so that is why we have come back and forged this partnership. This is a partnership that is getting widespread support in Fiji and beyond Fiji. Last night we were in Sydney. We met a lot of friendly Indo-Fijians. Yeah. And there is a lot of support for this partnership and for a post-election government, People's Alliance and the NFP government. And that's how we are moving forward.
Thank you. And the next question is for both of you, actually. What are the immediate challenges you both are facing?
Well, for me, it is working within the law, and some of the laws that have been enacted are pretty prohibitive for opposition parties. But we just have to, they are the laws now, and we'll have to abide by those and just be careful. Things that we never used to be worried about before. We could come up with a set of principles as our manifesto. Now we are required to put dollars along those. If you're going to say we're going to increase free education and up to what level, we have to put down how much will that cost the government and where are you going to be getting the money from? How will that affect the personal taxes and duties and all the other revenue measures we have, so that the people see that you're managing the economy well, you're managing the budget well, not too much of debt. We've been criticizing this government of running into big debts, putting us in a very heavily indebted position. Unfortunately, we're not classified as a poor country, so we cannot have too many of those helpful bailout things that international lending agencies can get into. So we have to work hard, and I believe we can get out of it, and there's got to be a lot of sacrifice.
So,
well, I think Mr. Rabuka has highlighted those challenges for the opposition party in terms of draconian laws, and as you are aware, we have draconian media laws, we have draconian electoral laws, and we are not in a real democracy. We have media organizations who are very, very pro-government, not independent, and those who are trying to be independent and work hard to give a fair and balanced reporting to all political parties are restricted in some sense, or they're fearful of the draconian laws. But there are other challenges in the current political and economic climate. I think there is a lot of anxiety and fear, and the Fiji First government, at least what I've seen in the last 7 years, is a government which has run on division and fear. And so part of our challenge in this election campaign is to educate our people about where we are in terms of the country, in terms of our economy, in terms of our health, education, poverty levels, debt level. And we have to manage the expectations that people have of the next government, because what we are going to end up, the next government, to deal with is going to be a huge mess. Whether you're talking about the worst ever census, medical census in the history of Fiji, whether you're talking about the mess in the education sector, whether you're talking about increasing levels of poverty, how we managed our COVID crisis, and more so our debt, which will have to be paid by future generations. So these are challenges that we have to navigate, not only in terms of explaining to the people in this campaign as to where we are, but also, as Mr. Rabuka said, how we can convince the people that we have the resources, we have the capability. And I think with the people in the People's Alliance, with the experience of Mr. Rabuka as former Prime Minister, and the experience that I've built up in Parliament and my own economic credentials, we know what the work lies ahead for us when we get into government. And obviously, in the ambit of within the ambit of the law, the draconian new law, where we have to inform somebody in government or the elections office or the register of political parties how we're going to, what we say in our manifesto. I mean, for example, in Australia, you imagine you have a situation where political parties have to write and explain to somebody in government. In a normal democracy, of course, political parties, make promises, they offer things. It's up to the people to judge whether the leadership of the party or the policies are credible or it's deliverable. It's not restricting the opposition parties from offering and suggesting these policies. I mean, we were told in 2018 election when we talked about minimum wages, when we talked about reducing VAT, we were told, oh, this is going to be unsustainable. This is not possible. But yet, some of those policies have been adopted by this government in the last revised budget.
Yeah.
So these are very difficult challenges. But as I said, with the resources that we have, with the people that we have in both parties, I think we would run a very, very credible government after the election, and we would be in a position to deal with some of these challenges that exist in the country at the moment.
So what do you see, where do you see Fiji in next 10 years?
Well, we want to see a Fiji that will be inclusive, that will work. We want to see a government and a Fiji where people are able to work together, where people are able to live well, where people feel confident about dealing with the government, where people feel free to criticize, to articulate, and a country where there is prosperity, where there is participation of young people, of women, of our indigenous community in forging a sustainable economy which provides a level of prosperity where people get good health services, where people get good education, where we have a very diversified economy, where we look after our environment, where we are able to deal with climate change issues, where we are able to provide resources for adaptation to deal with climate change impacts on our people. So that's the kind of Fiji we are looking at in the next 10 years.
Thank you, Mr. Prasad. The Memorandum of Understanding between PAP and National Federation Party, would you like to tell the public some details?
Well, it's just that we will be working together, and we have harmonized our the policies, and we'll have to do more of that after the election. I can say now there are no conflicting policies in the two parties. They both dovetail well together. And right now, the understanding is that People's Alliance is not the younger, but not senior, is the anchor of the two, and we'll be working together. And right now we have a technical team working towards these harmonized policies that we will work with as a government. We will be looking very closely at how much more we can do for each other. You'll probably heard that I made a very strong statement about bringing on stream the celebration of the impact of the Indian culture in Fiji, dating from the days of the indentured laborers. We would like to honor that, and that will be part of the national treasure. We will treasure the contribution and have a celebration. We will celebrate it so that we teach the people of the future that this is one of the great pillars upon which Fiji was built. And it goes back to the leader session, the promotion of civilization, the Christianity, and industry and trade. And the industry and trade one was necessitated the inflow of laborers to work in the new industry of the sugar. We would like to diversify that in the joint platform. We'll want to diversify and strengthen our economy and not have it standing on one or two pillars that are very vulnerable to things like international politics, weather, and pandemics. And when you affect that, you affect the whole thing. The shipping, the airlines, so many people lose their jobs.
The agreement, the memorandum of agreement, is a public document. It's available on our website. But the fundamental basis of that agreement or understanding is that we will run a inclusive government, which will be based on the fundamental principles of democracy, human rights, good governance, transparency, accountability. It will be run on the basis of a foreign policy that would include the Pacific region, which will include dealing with our regional institutions in a manner that we perhaps haven't been able to do that, including the University of the South Pacific. The memorandum of agreement also says that the two leaders would continue to meet on a regular basis. As Mr. Rabuka said, there is a technical team, comprising of members from the People's Alliance and the National Federation Party. We are sharing information with respect to our vision document, our policies, and we are setting the stage for a government which will easily get onto the job after the election. So the memorandum of agreement sets out the framework and the basis on which the government will run after the election. As Mr. Rabuka said, we can't have pre-election coalitions. So the two parties will fight for all the votes. People's Alliance will put 55 seats. We will put 55 candidates. They will put 55 candidates. And the outcome of the election results will mean that the two parties will form the government together and based on the principles underlined within the memorandum of agreement.
Thank you, sir. What is the current situation, economic, social, and political? There seems to be pressing need to find many solutions.
Well, the economic burden is big. We have a big debt burden, and the annual budget demands that we have a big portion of that going into debt servicing, which eats into the amounts that should be available for development, infrastructure development, capital works. And we still probably have too heavy our recurrent budget. That's one we have to look at. And our tax is not very comfortable. We will have to look at how we can share it further and make it better. Perhaps, and that's why BIMAN and I have been talking a lot, where there are questions where I go and ask him, what do you think of this? I think we should do it this way. And he will say, yeah, that's a good policy, but we have to marry it up with other areas because he's an economist and we talk about it very cordially. No, we won't have any one-upmanship that has appeared in some other political parties and some administration. In our case, I know my strength, I know my limits also.
I think this is a very good question. And before we actually talk about what we are going to do, and as you said, according to the law, we will be careful. We will be putting out our vision document and manifestos when the time is right. And in that, we will be articulating the policies and issues that we would deal with. But I think at the moment, Mila, I think it's important for us to understand where we are. I think, as I said, the economic crisis was building even before the COVID crisis hit us.
True.
In 2019, we almost had negative growth. The economy was contracting. The reports, such as ADB and others, said that we were almost in debt stress even before COVID. And when the COVID pandemic hit us, we didn't have much physical space, in other words, budget space. So basically, we got all our vaccines supplied by donors, including Australia and New Zealand. We had budget support from Australia and New Zealand. We sold EFL, the electricity organization, which was government owned. We borrowed more to look after our people, and I think the government's handling of the COVID crisis. Nobody talks about the fact that 1,800 people died directly or indirectly as a result of COVID in Fiji. And people also don't understand, and I want to thank, through your radio, our people living in overseas. In fact, in 2020, we received $652 million in remittances. In 2021, we received about $842 million. So in 2 years, a total of about $1.5 billion in remittances. And a lot of families and friends in Fiji survived because of the help that they received from their families and friends. And so our economic situation was very precarious even before COVID-19 hit us. We have one of the worst health services ever in the history of Fiji, and I've said this, what I'm saying to you here is not something new. I've said it in Parliament. I say it everywhere. And there is no real solution in sight from the current government as to how they're going to deal with the mess in the health sector. You look at the education sector, you look at infrastructure, we've spent so much money, we've piled up so much debt, but there is a lot of things that needs to be done. So we can carry on. I mean, the sugar industry was 3.2 million tons in 2006. Now it's down to a pocket-sized industry. So the next government will have a lot of things to deal with. And as I said, in time to come, we know what we will do. There are things that we don't know. We don't believe everything that comes out of the government, in terms of the figures, in terms of their own projections on revenue and expenditure and debt. So it's very difficult for any political party, as Mr. Rabuka said, in the opposition, to adhere to a law, the stupid law that this government has brought, without having all those information to determine how we can offer policies and promises to the people. So the people in Fiji understand that, and we will be educating them more and more on how difficult it is for the opposition to come out and offer solutions in terms of policies and programs when we don't have all the relevant information. But we know where the faults are. We know the nut and bolts of what went wrong, and I think we will provide effective economic leadership that has been lacking in Fiji for a long time when we get into government to deal with some of these real difficult situations. Poverty. Mr. Rabuka and I, 2 weeks ago, before we came here, we were in Lautoka. We went and saw families. How they live, and there are a lot of people out there, community organizations, NGOs like FRIEND, and we have a government in Fiji which is not prepared to work with this organization. They, in fact, if they work with political parties, they said they are political. We will run a government where we will bring the people together. We will invite NGOs, we will empower them, we will work with them so that they can, because the government alone can't do everything. And this is what the problem right now is. So the level of poverty is very high. I mean, in fact, after COVID, more than 150,000 people lost their jobs, income. Some of it is coming back. The tourism industry is picking up slowly. People are going back to jobs. That's a good thing. We encourage that, and we encourage people like yourselves to keep visiting Fiji and keep sending help to our people, because this all helps the people out there who are struggling to put food on the table. So there are serious, social and economic problems that the next government will have to deal with.
Sir, while we are there, regarding the sugar industry, where is it heading? Because I had some questions like what my listeners were asking.
Yeah.
Because as you know, they're very depressed, the price is falling and all that. So which direction it's going?
Well, the leadership that has been provided to the sugar industry in the last 15 years has been a disaster. In fact, it is actually quite shameful that they keep talking about how the industry is doing well when the figures, the facts, prove otherwise. We were producing 3.2 million tons in 2006. When Mr. Rabuka was Prime Minister, he provided the biggest support in terms of crop rehabilitation program in 97, 98. The sugar industry was thriving. So the question one has to ask is, who was running the country? Who has been the sugar minister for the last 7 years? It's the Prime Minister, Frank Bainimarama. And the industry is now a pocket-sized industry. When Cyclone Winston came, when the Reki mill was damaged, instead of building the mill, they closed it. And they promised that they were going to build some syrup mill or something. This is what we were told. It has not worked. The farmers are struggling to make any income out of the industry. So they took away the Sugarcane Growers Council, which was an elected body where farmers used to come together, share their problems, understand each other's difficulties. That no longer is there. So the question we have to ask, the people have to ask, is what has the Fiji First government done in the last 7 years to increase the production in the sugar industry? All previous parliaments, all previous prime ministers, including Mr. Rabuka, had joint parliamentary committees where the opposition and government would sit together and work out how to address the problem of the sugar industry. I've been talking about a joint parliamentary committee for the last 7 years. And the arrogance with which the current government has dealt with that offer of working together is just mind-boggling. And look at where the industry is. So it will require a lot of thinking, a lot of energy, a lot of getting together. Landowners, farmers, stakeholders to work together to bring the industry to some size and shape where farmers have interest, where farmers would be able to make some income, where we would be able to contribute through that industry to the economy.
Thank you, sir. When do you think the next election will be called in Fiji?
Well, we think we think it's going to be between July and February, and that is what is allowed for in our constitution. We are ready for a July election, and if it doesn't happen that soon, we are also prepared to continue our preparation. For the government, they may have another budget coming in at the normal cycle under this one. They will have to work out how they stand right now on what they can spend, what they can plan. In a way, they probably welcome a loss in the election because they do not know how to move forward. We know, and if that's the way, they can just surrender. But I think they will fight, and we will be ready to win. We are ready to win because we are ready with solutions to come out of where we are.
Sir, one more question. If you win the election, how the proposed coalition will function between your PAP and NFP?
Well, it'll show in our budget. In our cabinet. It'll be a mix of the two parties in cabinet. It'll be a merit-based cabinet where meritorious selection is made, and people who can contribute and are prepared to make sacrifices. We're looking at it will not be a compromised cabinet. It'll be a people who are willing to sacrifice and work for the betterment of a lot of the people.
One thing I want to say, that it will not be a two-man government. It will be a cabinet government. It will be an inclusive government. It will be a government which will consult with the key stakeholders. It will be a government which will be based on merit. It will be a government which will not be fearful of criticism. It will be a government which will have a vision for the people, in consultation with the people, work with the people, and bring them in the decision-making process in the way that government should do. So first, it will not be a two-man government. It will be a cabinet government, an inclusive government, one which will consult, will not be afraid of taking criticisms from our people.
I had a happy run as Prime Minister because I had a very strong opposition. And we allowed them to be strong. They spoke up against some of the policies we came up with. And they were always there driving the country this way or that way. And our government will pay a lot of attention to the parliamentary committees, the standing committees, and we'll even have, we can assemble purpose committees to help with the parliament.
And we'll respect the opposition. We will provide the parliamentary resources, unlike this government, which is almost starved the opposition from appropriate resources to function in parliament. And so we will have a government, as Mr. Rabuka said, which will respect the opposition, which will empower the opposition, because you can only have a good democracy, a good government, if you have a good parliament, a good accountable parliament, a good accountable opposition, well-resourced. That's what we will do, so that we have a collective process where everything is done in a transparent, accountable, open manner.
Thank you, sir. According to the Reporters World Press Freedom Index 2021, reporters in Fiji don't feel free to report. They fear intimidation. How do you propose to improve that?
We'll just respect the freedom of the press and the freedom of individuals and freedom of expression. And according to the international standards, at the moment, I think the audit have found out that we are way, way off the mark. We are stifling the rights of the people to speak, and also the rights of the media to portray what the people are saying and thinking. That will be free.
And we will immediately remove all the draconian provisions in the Media Industry Development Act, because that itself keeps the editors, the media organizations at bay. They don't feel the freedom to operate in the way that they should. I know that there are journalists in certain media organizations who would like to do their job freely. We will ensure that there is no corruption in the way in which some media organizations operate, and government will be fair. We will not have exclusive advertising in a certain pro-government media outlets only. We will have a policy which will be open, transparent, and will be inclusive of all media organizations, so that the media feels free and not threatened by government ministers and government people about what they do. So we will have a very, very clear message. Right now, there are certain media organizations that we feel we feel that we can't talk, because anything that we say would be twisted, turned around in the interest of what the government wants to hear. And so we feel bad because when we say we don't talk to journalists from certain media organizations, it's because we never get what we say reported fairly and properly and in a transparent way. So we want to create an environment where every media organization, every journalist feels that they can talk to us, that politicians should answer the questions, and we will create that environment. We will change the draconian provisions in the law, and our actions and our policies will ensure that the media is free.
Thank you, sir. Your message is passing through the live today, as you can see.
Thank you.
Okay, so in your opinion about true democracy and freedom of media, how will you handle this tragedy development by other countries in the Pacific?
Sorry, how will you do that?
Your opinion about true democracy and freedom of media, how will you handle this tragedy development by other countries in the Pacific?
Well, first of all, we'll have to do it right ourselves, and we cannot be criticizing our neighbors if we're not doing it right. We will encourage our neighbors and those in the Pacific Island community to do what is right, because it is right, not for any other reason. Only that way can we be seen as a true participant in a democratic region. We would like to get Fiji back as a responsible partner in the Pacific Islands Forum and the wider international community.
Thank you, sir. I got a listener, Robin Chand. He's saying a very great interview. 3 questions he's asking. Any initiative to promote foreign investment? Number 2, any initiative around education improvement for students? Number 3, what have been the lesson learned from history and what will be the different next time?
I believe we do not have a shortage of foreign investors willing to come in. It is the processes that we have in place that are discouraging them. It's taking too long for them to get approval for this and that. And that is when we established the investment machinery to facilitate the quick turnaround of applications. Now it's gone. So, people wait and wait and wait, and it's very difficult to come in with investor funds and get started. We would like to streamline that and make it very, very efficient. On what was the second one?
Second one was an initiative around education improvement for students.
Yes, well, at the moment we have the tertiary education loan scheme, which is really a self-funding scholarship. It's facilitated, but they have to pay back the fund that they used while they are undergoing education. And we'll have to have a commission to look at the whole education system. What are we training our people for? Is it appropriate for what we require as a country, as a contributor to the international labor force? Right now, we're getting so-called semi-skilled workers to come and work in Australia. And I'd like to thank Australia, New Zealand, America, and Canada for the remittances that Professor BIMAN has said. It is a sizable amount of money coming in to help directly with the families, and we thank the host countries to the Fijian diaspora in the world. The third question there is...
what is the lesson learned from history? What will be the different this time?
Well, we need to get to the bottom of why 87 happened, why 2000 happened, why 2006 happened. This government has been avoiding an inward-looking examination of Fiji. Why have we gone through all those things? How do we avoid them? I wanted to move a motion to do that, and that was not allowed by the business committee, which is dominated by the government. They thought we were going to try and find out who did what, why. What we really wanted to do was to avoid the pitfalls that could lead us into committing the same mistakes again.
On education, I can say this, I've been calling for an education commission since the 2014 election, because we feel that in the last 15 years, there's been many reforms that have been undertaken willy-nilly. One day they say we need to have this, another day, that's changed. For example, government set up these technical colleges. They spend a lot of money. All that is now gone to naught, has been closed. We are looking at how best we can train our people. And I think some of those policies will have to be reviewed, and it can be done effectively if we have an education commission, which we've been saying for a long time. And that is something that the next government will immediately look at once we come into government.
Thank you. So there's a few more questions I can ask because my listeners are listening at the moment. How will this government, if elected, bring peace in Fiji? As lots of robberies happening and also police harassing public more than catching thieves.
It's all to do with national discipline. If the enforcers of discipline find that there's no discipline in their superiors, it will be very difficult for them. It starts at the top. It starts at the top. And if the policeman on the beat is disheartened because he cannot do his job properly because he sees his superiors involved in things that are unprofessional conduct, they will also, why should I be doing what I know I should be doing if people get away with it, get away with not doing it? Law and order situation got to be tightened up. We need a very strong force, a strong policing force, and a strong judiciary that is fair and free.
Thank you, sir. And one more question. If this government wins, will poor people will continue to receive benefit and pension?
Yes, I think that's something that we cannot ignore. Most of the people who are now receiving benefits for poverty or age benefits have contributed to the GDP of the nation over the years. So we cannot just let them. Some of them may not have anything in FNPF. They may have used them all, but they have contributed. And it's the responsibility of the country, of the nation, to look after them in their twilight years.
In some circles, in fact, this is a government, there are people within the Fiji First Party and people who are going around and creating fear that the next government, somehow is going to take away your social pension or welfare allowance. I mean, one of the things that any government, what its salt would do is to ensure that our elderly, those who cannot, fend for themselves, who have very low income, who are living in poverty. These are social policies that any government would take care to understand, to devise, to look at. And so the next government will be no different. So I don't think people should be concerned about, how the next government is going to deal with some of these social and economic issues. Because as I said, we will work for the people, we will work with the people, and ensure that all our economic and social policies are very, very inclusive.
Thank you, sir. Somebody has asked, will there be more lease granted those still have native land?
There will be. There will be, according to the rules that the laws that now exist. At one stage, the government, some government in the past tried to bring in the land rates, where you pay there is a charge on the land you have. So if it's lying idle, you're paying money anyway to the government. But what we would like to do is to make land available for developers and those that will use them.
Thank you, sir. And what are your views on China making ties with Pacific countries?
we had an interview earlier this afternoon on that. It depends on what Fiji sees of itself in the future. We have had a good relationship with other countries who have enjoyed that relationship through difficult times and times of peace. We had China coming in when there was a vacuum left in our international relationship after our disruptions of democracy in 87, 2000, so on, 2006. But now that we are stabilizing, we should go back and work out who are the true friends of Fiji.
Yeah, I mean, they really should be no secrecy about the way we deal with the countries, and we are concerned that sometimes the foreign minister for China is visiting Fiji on Monday. We have had no real details from the government as to what is on the agenda from the side of the Chinese government, and what does Fiji have on the agenda. So these are things that need to be discussed openly and in a transparent and accountable way. As we've said before, our foreign policy would be based on fundamental principles of democracy, human rights, media freedom, transparency, accountability, rule of law, and these are values that are important for our progress, for peace and prosperity, not only in Fiji, but around the Pacific as well. So our foreign policy is going to be rooted in that particular framework.
Thank you, sir. There's a lady saying, Mina, I think education system is fair in Fiji. Medical system needs improvement. How will the government improve the medical system?
Well, it will be getting very close to opening up our manifesto, which involves the allocation of funds, which all I can do is we're going to improve those and make sure that we get our dollar's worth in wherever we spend that money. Yeah.
I think she's definitely correct, in saying that our medical system needs improvement. And as I said before, I can say that I have seen what was there in the 70s and the 80s when we were growing up. Right now, I think, given the number of complaints, the number of issues that come to us on a daily basis, the number of times I've raised issues in Parliament, I've moved motions, and on the basis of that assessment, I can say, and I've said this in Parliament, I've said this outside, and I can say it here, that right now, we have one of the worst health services ever in the history of Fiji. And that would require a lot of work. And when we, as Mr. Rabuka said, when we, put out our vision, our policies, we will be articulating how we are going to improve our health services for the people of Fiji.
The interesting thing is, and I don't think it's gone unnoticed, the budget is increasing. The allocation to those areas, those sectors in the economy have increased. But the quality of the service is not.
Yeah.
So that's what we all have to look at.
Yeah, that's what they say. Fiji is in debt. How government is going to pay all these debts?
Yeah.
Well, the debt will have to be paid.
Yeah.
Whether it's concessional loan, whether it's coming through bonds.
It's long.
The debt is dead, and it will have to be paid. Of course, we will have our own strategy, our policies. When we get into government, we will review the actual details, the figures, where we are in terms of the revenue projection, in terms of various sectors of the economy, how we are going to grow the GDP, and what sort of physical space we have, what would be our priorities. And so we will put in some very good, smart policies, and we'll make some decisions as to how we're going to deal with that. It will have to be dealt with by the new government. It will be a huge burden on the new government, but that's something that we can't avoid. And that's why we've been saying, for the last 7 or 8 years, that the government must, ensure that there is no wastage of taxpayers' funds. And we know there's been a huge wastage. And I've said this in Parliament. Of course, we have our own estimate of the amount of money, amount of taxpayer dollars have been wasted in the last 15 years. And we will deal with that when we are in government.
Thank you, sir. And what support will be provided to resolve lack of housing issues? Lack of housing issues.
We have land. We have informal housing, and what we had done during the SBT government was to convert those informal housing into formal housing, providing, and some of them worked very well. I visited a few about 2 months ago, and I was encouraged because I was involved in some of those resettlement of informal housing occupants, whether it's the land is needed for more urban industrial growth, or we just want to improve the social living standards of the people. It's got to be done. We cannot shy away from that responsibility. And there's got to be better arrangement between the traditional landowners, the developers, and the governments.
Thank you, sir. When coming back to sugarcane, Zayed King, he said hello to you all, and he's saying, government is only talking about what will your government do for FSC workers? Everyone's talking about only farmers, but FSC workers who are doing hard job because it's shift work day and night. Second, FSC, they are seasonal workers who are laid off when crushing ends, and it's very hard for them for 6 to 7 months when the next crushing season starts.
Yeah, I think those are genuine issues, and we appreciate that concern and those questions. And as I said, when we are looking at our policies, we're looking at the whole sugar industry. We know what has happened, why there are some of those serious problems, and we will have policies to deal with that, so that, like before, the stakeholders can work together. I mean, what the problem we have in Fiji right now is everything is controlled by the government. So the Sugarcane Growers Council is controlled by the government. Unions, we have draconian laws. The representation of workers' strength is not always realized in the way that it should be. So what we are going to do is to bring the stakeholders together. We will try and understand, where the pitfalls are, how we've got to this place, and what is needed or what is required, going forward. So I think I want to thank the person who's...
he was Zayed King.
Zayed for raising that, and I think it is a very, very genuine concern that he's raised.
Thank you, sir. And one more. Will there be fairness in everything between Fijians and Indo-Fijians? I'm only asking this, because politics has in past made some bitterness between us. I have lived in a village where we Indians and Fijians have been living like family, but most urban areas, this is not same.
This is precisely, I think that's a very genuine
genuine concern, yeah.
The fact that the NFP and the People's Alliance have forged this post-election coalition, we are providing this at the leadership level. We want to, as I said, the MOA that we've signed is based on the fundamental principles of inclusivity, working together. And we, in Fiji, we have lived together for the last 143 years. Of course, we've had our fair share of problems, coups, periods where, we've had, tense race relations. but it's up to the leaders. It's up to the leaders. And what we have done is to provide a platform, an environment with this partnership for the future. And I think the people who know us, who know Mr. Rabuka, who worked with him. I've worked with him in Parliament when he was the leader of the opposition, and people who've lived in rural areas like myself, who've interacted, we know that we need to create this at the leadership level. We need to get our language right. We need to get our disposition right. We need to shed our egos and arrogance about the way that we do things, so that people build trust. I mean, one of the things that we will do is that we want a government that people will be able to trust, so that they don't worry about whether the government is going to be about this group or that group. They should know that the government is going to be about everyone. And we will do it not just by talking. There's too much talk by this Fiji First government about inclusivity, about everybody working together. But when it comes to action, when it comes to the utterances, when it comes to working together, they don't show it in action. We will demonstrate that by our actions and the way that we will run the government when we get into power.
I'd like to say that I trust Professor BIMAN and his team, and I reciprocate the trust they have in me. If we can, at this level of leaders, have this trust among ourselves, I'm calling on our supporters and on the people to be able to trust one another and move forward.
True.
Let's forget about the past. Let's hold hands, take this country forward.
Thank you, sir. And there's so many questions people are asking. We'll be here all night. And maybe Mr. BIMAN, since you are on Facebook, you can answer to
One of the things, Shukila, I can say that we try and answer as many questions as we can.
Yeah.
But I want to thank all the people who are listening in, who are taking interest.
Yeah.
And we appreciate their time, and I hope that we've answered all the questions.
Before this is the last question I'm going to ask both of you. Give me 3 or 5 reasons why should voters support you, not Fiji Fest, SADALFA, or Labour Party?
What I can say very clearly is why people should not vote for Fiji Fest. And people are already telling us, because the people themselves have seen what has happened in the last 15 years under the Bainimarama government and then under the Fiji First government. I actually have faith in our people. I trust people's judgment. And I think they know that Fiji First time is over. They got the chance in 2014, almost lost the election in 2018. So the people know that this government has had a chance. Anything other than them is going to be good for the country. And what we are demonstrating by forging this partnership is an alternative that the people are trusting. We are getting feedback from throughout the country in our travels that people feel that now they have a choice, and that is why we feel that the people will vote for us, because they know that as per our partnership agreement, the fundamental principles on which the government will run is based on fundamental principles of inclusivity, democracy, human rights, and working together with the people. One of the things that people have been complaining about is the arrogance of the current government and the inability to work with our people. And that's what we are offering, and that is why people should vote for us.
Would you like to say something?
I agree. The Federation Party has been there for how many years?
63 years.
63 years. They are well trusted, well tested. People have seen me in leadership for 7 years.
Sorry, 59 years.
59. So I will say that the other parties have to show who they really are. At the moment, some of them are having that difficulty. We can show what we are made of, while some are still trying to run their ship properly.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you both for giving me this beautiful interview and your time. Before we go, would you like to say anything to our listeners?
Well, I just want to say thank you very much for listening to us. As I said before, we have provided an alternative to our people for the next election, and we look forward to working with all of you and giving Fiji a government that people would be proud of.
Thank you, sir. Would you like to say something before we go?
Well, we will look after you. I see that Penny Wong is, the Minister Wong is going to make things easier for you. All I can say, if you can give Fiji 840 million in a year, imagine how much you're contributing to this economy. So, well done. Serve Australia well. Don't forget Fiji.
Vinaka, sir, and thank you, sir.
And I just wanted to thank again the people, all our families and friends who live in overseas, who have hugely contributed to the welfare of our people through remittances in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that they will continue to do that. This year, there's already indication of substantial amounts coming this year. So I want to thank, on behalf of the people of Fiji, the support that our families and friends have given to the people in Fiji. Thank you. Vinaka.
Before we go, how can people voice their opinion to you as government?
We obviously will have government page. We will not use that as propaganda. We will ensure that we provide as much information as possible to our people, and there will be mechanisms where people would be able to write directly to different ministries, to different government departments. People will have access to the leaders, the ministers, and we will have a mechanism where people would be able to talk directly to the government. And we will not be afraid of criticisms of the government by the people, because that is the most important feedback that any government should get from the people.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the whole machinery of government will be operational. We'll have the various committees, the district committees, the village meetings, village council, the Kina councils, and all those things will be in operation. The town councils, city councils, they will have their own election. So the people's views will go all the way up, following the whole machinery up to the legislators.
We'll take democracy down to the people.
Thank you, sir. And
thank you.
No worries, thank you. Hopefully your voice has gone to all my listeners. On behalf of my listeners, I thank you again, once again, for giving this beautiful interview, and sir, you too. And hopefully all the best for your new election, which is probably in July. And once
Could be any time between July and January.
January, yeah. And looking forward for the next interview again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. जी हाँ दोस्तों साथियों, आप देख रहे थे आज जो हमारा इंटरव्यू मिस्टर सितिवेनी रंबुका, जो पीपल अलायंस पार्टी का और साथ साथ में नेशनल फेडरेशन पार्टी का प्रोफेसर बीमन प्रसाद के साथ हुआ था। उम्मीद है आपको ये इंटरव्यू पसंद आया होगा। कोई भी क्वेश्चन हो तो ज़रूर आप लिख सकते हैं, और साथ साथ में उसका जवाब ज़रूर हम देने की कोशिश करेंगे आप सभी से। थैंक यू फॉर लिसनिंग रेडियो सरगम, एंड we'll see you again.
Okay.